India and Pakistan are once again on the brink of all-out war.
India carried out a series of airstrikes overnight, hitting the Pakistan-administered part.
Started by India, escalated by India. It's the third night.
PF versus IF, 6-0.
26 civilians killed in Kashmir last month. Today, India struck 9 military targets across the border. 2 nuclear-armed nations now teeter on the edge of war. These numbers tell a story of escalating tensions that could reshape South Asia's future. In the next 13 minutes, I'll explain where India launched these strikes, the reasons behind their shift from diplomacy to military action, and the strategic capabilities both sides bring to this conflict. By the end, you'll see why experts are calling this the most dangerous standoff in the region since the 2019 Balakot airstrikes. Ground Zero, mapping the strike locations. Satellite imagery confirms missile impacts across 5 locations in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, with thermal signatures matching India's BrahMos cruise missile systems. The strikes targeted 3 critical military nodes: Kotli's communications hub, Ahmadpur East's radar station, and Muzaffarabad's regional command center. Each site played a pivotal role in Pakistan's defensive network along the line of control. Pakistani radar installations detected the incoming projectiles but failed to intercept any of the 9 missiles. This failure highlights vulnerabilities in Pakistan's air defense systems, particularly their Chinese-made LY-80 surface-to-air missile batteries. The Indian missiles flew at altitudes below 50 meters during their terminal approach, akin to a dart skimming just above the surface, exploiting radar blind spots. Blast pattern analysis identified BrahMos NG variants, distinguished by their fragmentation patterns and 500-kilogram warhead yield. Traveling at Mach 3, the missiles covered the 290-kilometer distance in under 3 minutes. 3 targets experienced secondary explosions, consistent with ammunition depot strikes. Infrared footage from the Meridki site captured a chain reaction detonation lasting 47 seconds. India also struck 3 forward operating bases linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba. The Sambriel complex, 15 kilometers from the line of control, housed 2 training camps and a logistics hub. Satellite imagery, taken 6 hours before the strike, revealed heat signatures indicative of militant activity. The precision of these strikes suggests advanced human capabilities, likely from infiltrated assets within militant networks. Codenamed Sindoor, the operation targeted 6 training compounds and 3 supply depots across a 120-kilometer front. The strikes demonstrated significant advancements in India's ISR capabilities since the 2019 Balakot operation. Real-time drone surveillance provided battle damage assessments within 90 seconds, enabling immediate evaluation of strike effectiveness. Initial casualty estimates range between 40 to 60 militants, based on intercepted radio communications and pre-strike activity logs. Pakistan's military spokesman Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry denied any casualties, calling the strikes a heinous provocation. This denial reflects Pakistan's refusal to acknowledge militant presence at these military facilities. The Meridki strike, 300 kilometers inside Pakistani territory, showcased India's expanded operational range and the first confirmed use of its indigenous NAVIC system for missile guidance. Electronic warfare units jam Pakistani radar frequencies during the critical 8-minute launch window, ensuring mission success. These strikes, executed 19 days after the Pahalgam massacre, signal a strategic shift toward proactive target elimination. The spark, Pahalgam massacre, that changed everything. Dashcam footage from vehicle number J, K03, F-8973 captures the harrowing moment at 1842 local time when a convoy of 36 Amarnath pilgrims came under gunfire near Pahalgam. The attack, which occurred on June 14th along the NH501 highway, saw militants positioned at 3 elevated points along a 300-meter stretch of road. Over the course of the assault, 26 civilians were killed before the attackers retreated into the Pir Panjal mountain range. Forensic teams linked recovered 7.62 by 39mm cartridge casings to a 2016 shipment of Type 56 assault rifles from Pakistan's POF-Wah ordnance factory. Serial numbers on fragments matched rifles documented in declassified UN reports as destined for Kashmiri militant groups. 8 Chinese-made IR-518 thermal scopes were also recovered, with procurement trails pointing to grey market dealers in Kunming, China. This advanced equipment underscores the likelihood of state-sponsored support. Among the casualties were 19 women and 4 children, with 14 victims from Gujarat's Mehsana district. Passenger manifests reveal the convoy carried middle-class Hindu families on the annual pilgrimage. The massacre left families shattered, with entire communities in mourning. It marked the deadliest civilian attack in Kashmir since the 2017 Amarnath Yatra bombing. Intercepted radio transmissions identified the attackers as members of Jaish-e-Mohammed's 313 Brigade, a suicide squad unit. Communications were routed through a repeater station in Muzaffarabad, controlled by handlers at Pakistan's 12th Infantry Division headquarters. The attackers crossed 14 kilometers over the line of control using goat trails in the Poonch sector, evading Indian patrols. The ambush followed a calculated tactical plan. 2 teams created overlapping kill zones, while a third disabled the convoy's lead and rear vehicles with IEDs. Militants targeted fuel tanks to trigger secondary explosions. Evidence suggests the attackers rehearsed the operation using digital terrain models, with satellite phones containing geotagged practice routes. This tragedy became a turning point for India's counter-terrorism strategy. The civilian toll and attack sophistication prompted New Delhi to expand strike parameters, targeting sites up to 300 kilometers inside Pakistan. Within 72 hours, India launched retaliatory strikes, including a precision attack on a compound linked to the assault's handlers. The massacre's timing, during the peak pilgrimage season, was a deliberate attempt to maximize psychological impact, further galvanizing India's response. From ceasefire to cross-border strikes, Kashmir's perpetual war. Declassified UN Security Council documents from 1948 reveal how temporary ceasefire arrangements gradually hardened into permanent divisions. The line of control, initially a provisional boundary pending a plebiscite that never occurred, became a de facto border. Over 3 generations, Kashmiris have lived under this unratified line, as both nations entrenched their competing claims. What began as temporary observation posts have transformed into fortified military installations, sculpting the region into a permanent battlefield. Satellite analysis from January 2024 highlights the intensifying militarization. The militarization index along the LOC has surged 42% since 2019, reflecting a significant escalation. Both sides constructed 137 new bunkers in just 3 years, despite the 2021 ceasefire agreement. These fortifications, concentrated in infiltration-prone areas like the Neelam Valley and Poonch sector, feature overlapping fields of fire and pre-positioned artillery, signaling preparation for sustained conflict. The 1999 Kargil conflict set a precedent for India's zero-tolerance policy toward incursions. When Pakistani troops seized positions in the Dras sector, India responded with maximum force, including high-altitude airstrikes. This red line remains operative. Any uniformed crossing of the LOC triggers immediate retaliation. However, the current escalation marks a departure from past confrontations. Unlike the 2019 Balakot strikes, which targeted terrorist camps in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, recent operations struck deep into Pakistan's mainland, including Muridka. This shift in operational doctrine underscores India's willingness to blur the distinction between Pakistan proper and its administered territories. Decades of conflict have driven both nations to adapt their military capabilities. Archival records trace India's evolution from British-era rifles to specialized high-altitude equipment, while Pakistan fields modified Al-Khalid tanks. The Siachen conflict epitomizes this commitment, with both sides maintaining outposts above 20,000 feet for 40 years at immense cost. The failure of the 2021 ceasefire agreement is evident in the continued military buildup. 3 of the 9 recent strike targets were constructed after the truce, exposing its ineffectiveness. Defense analysts note, India's strikes signal a strategic shift, linking actions in Kashmir to risks for Pakistan's mainland. This policy raises the stakes as both nations prepare for potential escalation beyond the Kashmir theatre. Weapons of escalation, India's new strike capabilities. Infrared analysis of the strike sites confirmed the distinct 870 degrees Celsius thermal signature of BrahMos NG missiles, recently deployed with India's 15th Corps in Kashmir. These missiles, with their reduced weight and 450 kilogram warhead, offer greater payload flexibility. Enhanced terminal guidance systems and plasma stealth features, which reduce radar cross-section to 0.1 square meters, make them akin to invisible arrows slicing through the fog of war. The AI-driven terminal seekers, capable of distinguishing real targets from decoys, represent a leap forward, addressing lessons from the 2019 Balakot operation. Flight trajectory data revealed the missiles maintained a terrain-hugging 15-meter altitude during their final approach, exploiting gaps in Pakistan's radar coverage. Despite detecting the launches, Pakistan's air defense network failed to respond effectively. JF-17s scrambled 22 minutes post-launch, too late to intercept, hindered by jamming, decoy signatures, and outdated radar systems. The strike was timed to exploit a 17-minute coverage gap during the rotation of Pakistan's Eri early warning aircraft. Satellite imagery confirmed 12 BrahMos launches from transporter-erector launchers in Jammu's Samba district, with each TEL executing shoot-and-scoop maneuvers within 90 seconds. The missiles followed three distinct paths, targeting Muzaffarabad, Kotli, and Ahmadpur East. Impact accuracy, measured at 12 meters CEP, enabled the destruction of Muzaffarabad's underground command bunker, demonstrating precision that reshaped strategic calculations. The operation also marked the combat debut of Project Kusha, India's integrated air defense network. Combining indigenous and Israeli radar systems, Kusha tracked 78 airborne contacts while coordinating electronic countermeasures. Jamming neutralized Pakistan's LD-2000 systems, creating an electronic corridor for the missiles to pass undetected. Weapons performance data confirmed all 9 primary targets were destroyed or severely damaged, with secondary explosions at 3 ammunition depots. The Muridka strike, requiring a 290-kilometer flight at Mach 3.1, showcased India's extended reach and the BrahMos NG's ability to recalibrate the regional military balance. Pakistan's existing air defenses lack the reaction time to counter such strikes, forcing a potential reassessment of its deterrence posture. With additional missile regiments planned by 2025, India's strategic advantage appears poised to grow, altering the dynamics of escalation in South Asia. Nuclear calculus. Assessing Pakistan's response options. Pakistan's National Command Authority convened an emergency session at 23:17 local time following the Indian strikes, activating the Strategic Plans Division within 37 minutes. This rapid response underscores the gravity of the situation, as within 2 hours, satellite imagery revealed increased vehicle activity at Kushab nuclear complex. 6 large transporter vehicles moved from storage tunnels to missile assembly buildings, consistent with nuclear weapon preparation procedures observed in past crises. The Ra-2 air-launched cruise missile, with its 600-kilometer range and stealth capabilities, serves as Pakistan's primary standoff nuclear delivery system. It can target 7 major Indian cities while remaining outside most air defense zones. Flight tests in 2022 confirmed its precision, with a 35-meter circular error probability. Pakistan maintains 4 Mirage 3 squadrons for Ra-2 deployment, 2 of which were placed on high alert after the strikes. Meanwhile, raw intercepts confirmed the forward movement of NASA tactical missile systems near the Jammu sector. These short-range ballistic missiles, equipped with sub-kiloton nuclear warheads, have a 70-kilometer strike radius. Indian surveillance detected 6 transporter-erector launchers moving from Sargodha to Gujarat district, reducing response time to under 12 minutes for targets in Indian Kashmir. This marked the first forward deployment of tactical nuclear weapons since 2019. Diplomatically, Pakistan summoned 9 ambassadors, including permanent UN Security Council members, to deliver protest notes. Cables revealed plans to invoke Article 35 of the UN Charter, requesting an emergency session on Kashmir. This move mirrors protocols used during the 2019 Pulwama crisis. ISI communications with embassies in 17 capitals further emphasized coordinated messaging on Kashmir's sovereignty. The complexity of these maneuvers resembles a high-stakes chess match, where each move signals intent and escalates pressure. Activation signals intercepted by RAW, originating from Lahore, matched code phrases linked to the 2018 Mumbai attack. Indian agencies identified 7 potential sleeper cell locations across major cities, heightening domestic security concerns. Pakistan's 3-phase retaliation doctrine became evident through sequential actions: air defense activation, Ghaznavi missile deployments, and emergency fuel loading for nuclear-capable aircraft. Strategic Forces Command also relocated Babur 3 submarine-launched cruise missile platforms, extending strike coverage along India's western coastline. These actions, combined with electronic warfare measures and heightened communication checks, reflect a calculated escalation strategy. Global fallout. When regional conflicts go international, the UN Security Council braces for its 3rd emergency session on Kashmir in 5 years, underscoring the urgency of a crisis reverberating across the globe. Permanent members remain deeply divided, reflecting a fractured mirror of conflicting interests. Draft resolutions highlight these rifts. The United States condemns cross-border terrorism while supporting India's right to self-defense, whereas China's draft accuses India of violating territorial integrity, aligning with Pakistan's stance. Meanwhile, satellite imagery reveals Chinese J-20 stealth fighters patrolling near eastern Ladakh within hours of India's strikes, conducting electronic surveillance just outside Indian airspace, an implicit signal of Beijing's military posture. Russia's response is notably restrained, balancing its $6.2 billion arms trade with India and $1.8 billion with Pakistan. Diplomatic cables show Moscow urging both nations to preserve existing agreements, a carefully neutral stance. Russian Ambassador Nikolai Kudashev delivered identical messages to New Delhi and Islamabad, reflecting Moscow's strategic interest in maintaining its defense contracts, including potential deals for Su-35 fighters with India and upgraded T-90 tanks with Pakistan. The strikes also cast a shadow over the $21 billion India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor. Talks in Oman were postponed indefinitely, raising concerns about disruptions to global trade. Shipping analysts warn that prolonged conflict could destabilize the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point for 17% of global oil shipments. Insurance premiums for vessels transiting the region have already surged by 42%, threatening supply chains and driving up costs for businesses worldwide. Efforts to mediate are underway, with Oman and Qatar proposing emergency talks in Muscat. Both nations have significant stakes. Oman hosts over 700,000 Indian workers, while Qatar holds $12 billion in Pakistani debt. Their contingency plans, refined after the 2019 crisis, include phased de-escalation talks, starting with military representatives. Economic ripples are already evident. The Indian rupee dropped 1.7% against the dollar, while Pakistan's central bank spent $300 million defending its currency. Disrupted cotton shipments from Punjab threatened textile production in Bangladesh and Vietnam, while delays in basmati rice exports risk food shortages across the Middle East and East Africa. These cascading effects illustrate how a regional conflict can quickly escalate into a global economic crisis, leaving no corner of the world untouched. India's surgical strikes mark a pivotal moment in its military history, reshaping regional deterrence dynamics. The operation targeted 9 sites in Pakistan-administered Kashmir and Pakistani territory, 3 militant training hubs, and 6 logistical bases. Both nations, armed with nuclear capabilities, now stand at DEFCON 2 equivalent, with Pakistan deploying NASA tactical missiles and India placing Rafale fighters on alert. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Kushab complex processes weapons-grade uranium, and global insurers have declared the Arabian Sea a high-risk zone. As tensions escalate, one must ask, how will these actions shape the fragile balance of regional stability and the broader future of global security?